Hello and welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be discussing our recent UK Bloggers Survey 2017, from bedrooms to boardrooms. If anyone on the line thinks this is going to be a saucy webinar, I'm afraid you're in the wrong place. It's going to be all blogging, all stats, and it's going to be very good. You can join the conversation, hashtag Vuelio or hashtag UK Bloggers Survey. You can also find us on Twitter and Facebook. We will be tweeting out links to the survey for those that haven't downloaded it yet. You can get all the stats on the latest state of the blogosphere in the UK. Today I am joined by Jo Middleton. She is the author of Slummy Single Mummy, one of the leading bloggers in the UK at the moment. She is an award winner from the Vuelio Blog Awards, including Best UK Blog 2015. She was a judge last year. She's shortlisted again this year. She is pretty much amazing. Jo, good morning.
Hello, thank you for that nice introduction. Although I'm disappointed about the lack of sauciness that's going to be in the webinar.
Jo, what you say on this webinar is up to you. If you want to make it saucy, that's fine. So could you just introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about you as a blogger?
Yeah, sure. So I started my blog, Slummy Single Mummy, back in 2009 when my children were 7 and 14. So I guess initially it was a much more of a parenting kind of slant to it, and was a lot more just kind of like my personal ramblings. And then as my children have got older and less keen on me posting about them, I've kind of expanded what I write about. And I guess like the nature of the blog has evolved as well into something that is also my main source of income, which is nice.
Perfect. That is the perfect introduction to what we're talking about today. So the Vuelio UK Bloggers Survey this is the second year we have published this. We publish it in conjunction with Canterbury Christchurch University. We take a sample of bloggers and we present a snapshot of the blogging sector, and it also maps out some of the changes in bloggers' work, in behaviour and opinions since last year. So not only does it tell you about bloggers now, but it tells you how they've changed. And we're going to start with the rise in parenting bloggers, which it's almost like we chose you, Jo, perfectly for this moment.
Almost like planned it.
Yeah, the rise from last year to this year, we've got a 13% increase in parenting and family bloggers.
It's amazing.
You've been doing this for quite a long time.
Yes,
and
I have.
Obviously, you're somewhat of a trailblazer, I think it's fair to say, in this sector. And you said that your blog is evolving, so it was quite parent focused, but now it's quite broad. I just wondered how you find the parenting sector at the moment, the community of bloggers online.
I think the parenting sector has always been quite a supportive one. I mean, certainly when I started blogging and the community was much smaller, it felt like you were part of a real community. Obviously, with the massive increase in the number of parent blogs, that kind of community does kind of probably sectioned off a little bit. You can't know everybody, but generally, I think it's a good community to be part of. It's a massive increase, though, isn't it? 16 to 29%.
It's huge. We were wondering if maybe perhaps there are established bloggers already, and they then have children, and so parenting and family becomes part of what they're blogging about.
Yeah, it could be. I guess, partly it must be to do with kind of people seeing other parent blogs becoming more well established and seeing that it's possible to make a living out of it, and that becoming quite an attractive option when it comes to kind of going back to work full or part-time. If you think you have the option to work for yourself and be more flexible, I think that's definitely going to appeal to more and more people.
And how long, so obviously when you started, that wasn't really how blogging was seen. It wasn't really seen as an established career path, which is something we've seen quite a lot in this year's survey, is that it is an industry, it is a valid career option. But back when you started, so how long did it take from when you started in 2009? How long did it take to get to a point where you thought, actually, I can make a living off this?
It was very gradual, and I would like to say there was some kind of amazing tipping point where I suddenly thought, this is it, I can, this is all I need to do. But it wasn't really like that. It was very gradual, and it was like a good year, I think, of writing before that had any kind of commercial interest. And then, like, my first freebie was a tube of hand cream. And I remember being very excited about being offered that and kind of like, you know, messaging all my family and being like, oh, somebody wants to send me something for free. I'm getting some hand cream and don't have to pay for it. Which is, you know, I never had those kind of expectations from it. So, you know, that was always a bonus for me.
And did you write about the hand cream?
I did write about the hand cream, and I wrote about it in a very honest way. It was effective, but it had a smell of old people's homes about it. That kind of like boiled cabbage, you know.
Yes, I think. Yeah, no, I think you can stop. You can stop there. I think we know.
Yeah.
I think we know what
Is
you're
this
getting
upping the
at,
sauciness factor?
Yeah. And so it did get coverage, but you're very honest in your approach to blogging.
Yes. But, you know, there's no point in me telling everybody that it's the most amazing hand cream in the world and then everybody buying it and going, oh, hang on a minute, this smells of old people's homes. You know, you've got to be upfront with people if you want them to kind of trust what you're saying and come back and read other things.
Excellent. And back to the parenting sector, obviously our survey we have male and female bloggers in each sector. Now, to me, and I don't know, online, it seems like the mummy bloggers, the mothers who are blogging, that they're a much bigger part of the parenting, the family bloggers than the daddies. But here we've only got just a 3% difference between them. I just wondered, like, what do you think maybe that's causing that perception, or is it? Am I just completely wrong?
Well, I've thought about this before, and I wonder if it's to do with the audience, because if you think of, you know, the kind of target audience as a kind of classic mummy blogger is likely to be other women. I know my audience is something like 80% female, and other women are interested in reading about other women's experiences of parenting and being at home with kids or working with kids, whereas with men, you know, perhaps there isn't the same proportion of fathers who are interested in reading about parenting. So perhaps the audience for the daddy bloggers is just naturally a bit smaller. I mean, I know, like, the dads that I know would probably be going online to kind of indulge, like, their own interests outside of the family, like, you know, in kind of politics or finance, whatever, you know, whatever it might be that interests them. They're less likely to kind of want to go online and read about babies, I think.
Yeah. And as a community, do you feel like you're all part of the same community, or is it an us v them kind of situation?
Oh, I definitely don't feel like an us v them type of vibe. I guess, like, naturally perhaps the dad bloggers are going to kind of you know, make alliances with other men just to kind of, because they understand the situations a bit more. But no, there's a lot of dad bloggers that I've kind of grown up with in the sense of, you know, in the blogging world.
Yeah. Broader across all topics, the parenting and lifestyle and fashion and beauty are the three, like, major areas for female bloggers. I just wondered, do you think there's a problem in some of these topics that just aren't being covered by female bloggers?
Well, I mean, it would be nice to kind of see more women interested in the kind of less traditionally female industries like politics or business. But, you know, you can't kind of force these things. If people are interested in writing about something, then they'll write about that. And I think that's kind of the important thing to do when you're blogging, is to write about something that you're passionate about. You know, I could start writing about politics, and I have written odd posts about politics, but it's not something that I'm naturally passionate about. So I could kind of force it to try and adjust the gender balance, but I don't think that would then be terribly interesting for other people, because, my interest wouldn't come across. Yeah,
so it's got to fit in with what comes from you anyway. It's not,
you
haven't got an editor who's telling you have to cover certain topics. You're covering the topics that you want to cover.
Yeah.
Excellent. And I mentioned earlier, we're seeing this rise in professional blogging. We're up 4% in bloggers that see it as their main source of income. and we're up 6% in those that in future would like it to be their main source of income, and it's a realistic option. So that moment when you turn pro, you said you've got your first hand cream, which smelt peculiar. When you turned pro, how did that work with like your day job and then what you were doing on the blog, and then how did it skip over into now the blog is full-time?
Well, I think I was lucky because I'd given up a full-time job to work for myself anyway. So although the blog wasn't my main source of income, I was self-employed. So I was doing bits of journalism, bits of copywriting, kind of things that were related. And that was actually my motivation for setting up the blog in the first place, was to market myself as a journalist and a copywriter. So it was really easy for me because every time the blog started taking up more of my time, I could just scale back on the other things. But there didn't come a point where I had to kind of make a big decision of, I'm going to give up this job, I'm going to go down to 2 days a week or whatever it was. It was a very kind of easy, natural process. But in terms of kind of, sorry.
No, go on.
I was just thinking, in terms of kind of like that increase in professional blogging, that's something I've definitely noticed in parenting in the last couple of years, is people really upping their game, and lots more parent bloggers kind of becoming resources and encouraging other bloggers to kind of make it their main source of income. There's lots of kind of very entrepreneurial groups and Facebook groups that are popping up all the time that are kind of encouraging bloggers to take themselves more seriously and to become more professional.
And how do you fit into that new kind of like encouraging other people? Are you someone people come to for advice for setting up blogs?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think I'll ever be one of those bloggers who blogs a lot about blogging, if you know what I mean. There's plenty of people who do that really well already, but definitely people sort of come to me through email or Twitter or Facebook, and they're setting up a blog and they want some tips, and they kind of see that I've been going a long time and think that I might have some pearls of wisdom.
Well, you do have lots of pearls of wisdom, Jane. It's one of the main reasons we've got you here, is that you are obviously in this career path. You are a trailblazer. You are, you have led the way in many ways. It's
funny, isn't it? Because I'm not trained to do this. And it's happened so gradually that it almost feels like it's a bit like, oh, okay, I am an expert in it, but I'm not entirely sure.
I suppose because you have been doing it for 8 years now.
Yeah.
And much the 8 years is it's a decent amount of time, but in terms of blogging, it's a huge amount of time.
Yeah, it's like kind of human years and dog years, isn't it?
Yeah. In dog years, you're an ancient blogger.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a long time, I think, and it's changed so much in that time.
In terms of like promoting what you're doing, so getting out there, originally you started to promote your work. How are you using different social platforms?
Social media has always been quite a big part, obviously, of what I do. And because I think my blog, by its nature, isn't especially visual, so things like Instagram and Pinterest, although I know that they're really valuable kind of marketing platforms for a lot of bloggers, they've never been the ones that have kind of suited me. So right from like quite an early stage, I think I focused in on Twitter and thought to myself, there are so many social media channels, and it's very easy to feel like you have to do everything, but it's also very easy to spread yourself too thin. And so I decided that I would just pick, like one or two that I could do really well, and be really proactive about kind of, growing them and engaging with people. And that hence having kind of that number of followers on Twitter, which I don't think is terribly common in parent bloggers.
Yes, no, definitely, a very high number for parenting bloggers, I think.
And also, I think, obviously it's not just about numbers, and it's important to look behind those and look at engagement and look at, lots of different factors. But if you're working with brands, there is something to be said in having those kind of tangible statistics that somebody can look at very quickly and kind of get an indication of your influence. Obviously you need to back it up, but it's good to have some of those kind of like visible stats.
Yeah, and you know, you're choosing Twitter as the biggest one. That is, as we know from the survey, it is the main choice of bloggers in general. I just wonder what makes... No, go on, sorry.
I was just going to say, I was quite surprised to see that Twitter came out top, because I know kind of from talking to other bloggers, I think more people seem to be feeling like, you know, Twitter isn't perhaps the easiest of channels to get engagement from, and are kind of shifting away to the other things like, you know, Instagram and YouTube. So I guess, though, with Twitter, you've got the benefit of being able to utilize kind of lots of different scheduling tools and make it a bit more automated, so you can have a regular presence on Twitter without having to put too much work in. Yeah,
and people are leaving Twitter. I appreciate it's just a 4% drop, and it's still at 94%. But Facebook is growing, Instagram is growing, and YouTube, like you said.
I mean, they've all gone to blog loving by the looks of it.
Well, yeah, blog loving. I'm not sure what's happened there, but it's obviously ramped up its marketing effort among bloggers.
It's exploded.
Do you use blog loving yourself?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think you can follow me on blog loving. It's not anything I kind of consciously promote.
Yeah,
it's just kind of there in the background, isn't it?
There's obviously a sector of bloggers that have picked it up and run with it.
Something's happened.
And so so you chose Twitter, and you're now huge on Twitter. What makes a person successful on Twitter? What makes a blogger successful on Twitter?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's just about kind of getting that balance of content right. You know, I see some kind of accounts on Twitter who I think, yeah, I definitely want to follow those, and they're doing really well, and they're saying lots of funny things. But also, as a blogger, you need to be able to balance that with some self-promotion. So I think, you know, so I do use some scheduling tools to kind of to share like evergreen blog content, and not that I know I don't have to be worrying about that all the time. And I do use some other tools to share other people's content and to kind of look for interesting news stories. And then I layer in like the more personal stuff, or kind of more like instant things, you know, like pictures of the kittens and random questions and things. But it is a difficult balance, and yeah, it's a tricky one.
Is it like a practice makes perfect? You find what works, and then you try and stick to that kind of routine?
Yeah, I think, and I guess it just depends on what you want to get out as well. You know, I see lots of bloggers who are just sharing their own content over and over again, and, you know, perhaps that's all they want Twitter to do for them, because they've got other channels where they're focusing more on that kind of personal content. So, yeah, it's just trying to think about what you actually want to get out of it, and then experimenting to see what works best for you.
Excellent. And I think a topic that will be perhaps in the forefront of people on the lines who are listening in, their minds, is working with PRs. Now, this is a graph I picked out from our survey, which is the number of pitches made against whether it resulted in content. How many pitches are you receiving a day, a week?
I'm definitely in that 6+ category. I'd say probably like between 50 and 100 in the week.
Right. So
it depends on the time of year a little bit as well.
So what are the big time of year? What are the time of years where you get lots of?
Well, just kind of like, as in most industries, really kind of quieter in the summer and Christmas and holidays, and then sort of, you know, September and January, and there's kind of like times where people start thinking about new projects.
And does that mean if it's a quieter time, like the summer months, are you more likely to respond well to a pitch, or doesn't it matter? It's how you respond anyway. Doesn't change.
No, I might be more likely to respond, because if it's a particularly busy time and I'm overwhelmed by requests, then you have to be a little bit more brutal with your filtering. Whereas if you know, it's the middle of August and nobody's been in touch with you all day and you're feeling a bit sad, then you might be more likely to respond.
I imagine,
So yeah, there's lots of personal factors that come into it as well.
Yeah, so I imagine you've got an audience full of people that are now going to be scheduling pitches for next August, just to make sure you're not at home all day on your own.
Or if they could try and time it where, like, I've just looked at some shoes I really like or something, and then I might be keener.
They'd have to know what you've been. They'd have to know you. They'd have to be following you.
Yeah, that would be weird then, wouldn't it?
It'd be like online advertising, but offline and knowing where you've been.
Yeah, that would be creepy. Okay, don't do that.
Don't do that. Okay. And can you tell us about a successful? I think we've got an example here of you. Obviously, you work with lots of brands, but
yes,
this collaboration you've done with Iceland. So a pitch that is successful. How does that work?
Yeah, well, this is interesting because I know that you put together this slide and randomly chose Iceland, and actually Iceland is a really good example because it's not a brand that I would normally shop with. I know that, I'll be honest and say that if I was going to go and do my weekly shop, I probably wouldn't go into Iceland because kind of to me Iceland has always been like frozen kebab pizzas and, you know, that kind of like cheap frozen food. And so I was interested when they got in touch because they wanted to kind of show like another side to what they do. And I think that actually I was a really good person for that because I'm not already like an Iceland customer, and so I can kind of empathise with my readers' reservations about it and say, look, I get that you might not normally think to go to Iceland, but this is the experience I've had and it has changed my mind. You know, so I've been to kind of a few events with Iceland now where I've done kind of tastings and like different food related stuff, and I've genuinely been like really impressed every time and kind of come away thinking, wow, you know, they've changed my mind. And I think that's like a really powerful thing then to communicate with people.
I suppose because you have this reputation as an honest blogger, like you said with the hand cream originally, you are an honest blogger. Your audience knows that this is not a bought opinion, it's your opinion.
Yeah, they know that I'm not going to, like, yeah, exactly. I'm not going to just kind of say nice things about Iceland if I don't mean them. So yeah, and how do people trust that? How does
Iceland respond to, you know, this idea that you in your post you're saying the fact that you wouldn't have normally shopped at Iceland, you're happy to talk about that, but they've changed your mind. Do they like that? Does that work well?
Yeah, well that's what they're trying to achieve, isn't it? You know, when brands are kind of reaching out to bloggers, often it's because they want to change a perception of that brand and to reach people who wouldn't normally be customers. And so it's ideal for them, you know, because it's somebody saying exactly what they want to tell other people, isn't it? As you might not think of Iceland, but actually give it a go and you might be surprised. I think the other thing I really liked about working with Iceland, which I don't think enough brands do, is they're really on it in terms of like their reporting and what they want to know from me. So it doesn't feel like...
Before we start?
Well, before we start, but also like feedback afterwards, because so often I work with a brand and I'll send a link to the post and they'll go, oh, that's brilliant, and then you never hear from them again. And you kind of feel like you've been part of a tick box exercise. Yeah. Whereas Iceland, you know, want to know kind of loads of different stats on, you know, how many people have read the post, how many people have engaged with your social media posts. You know, they want to see that they're getting a return on their investment. And I think as a blogger, you know, that's always a positive thing because it makes you accountable and it kind of pushes you to always like to do your best, you know, and you feel like the work that you're doing is valued. And so yeah, I like that about them too.
Excellent. And so with pitches, like normally it seems like for you it's the same as most other people. It's personal opinion that you know drives you to post and to share your opinion and to share what's, you know, your collaborations are. But with Iceland, your personal opinion wasn't maybe tip top to start with. So what did they do to woo you and get you along to change it?
I think you need to think like a little bit broader than your own personal opinions and to think about your audience as well. So, you know, I might not have instinctively thought to shop at Iceland, but my readers might, or they might be interested in finding out more. So you kind of have to expand that bit a little bit. I think kind of, you know, obviously the money side of it is a factor, and when you get so many pitches from brands, you are going to naturally kind of prioritise ones that might be better paid. I don't think there's any shame in saying that. I have done like several pieces of work with Iceland, so the long-term relationship one is definitely a factor for me, and I think it's nicer and it can be more beneficial for a brand if they can do kind of several things with the blogger, because then the readers are kind of, you know, getting that drip feed, aren't they, and kind of getting that message repeated to them.
Yes.
I
think we. I was just going to say, we've had a question earlier because it kind of relates to, you know, your personal opinion and then what's going on. I think this was about the hand cream, which was how does your personal opinion, does it fit in with defamation laws, and is that something that you're like conscious of, that you're saying something that's perhaps, I don't know, legally shaky, or not because it's a personal opinion?
Well, I mean, probably nowadays, if they were to send me the hand cream, what I'd probably do is to be in touch with the brand first and say, look, your hand cream smells really funny. Do you want me to write that? And be honest, or would you rather I just didn't write anything at all? Because I don't want, I want my blog to be quite a positive thing. I don't want to be just saying mean things about people all the time. So in the past, when I've kind of had experiences of a product or like a trip or something where there's been an aspect of it that has been like below standard, I've always got in touch with the company first and said, look, this is our experience. I don't want to write about it and not tell people about this. You know, the other option is for me just to not write anything about the product, but I don't want to kind of leave out things that might influence people's decisions. So,
you either include all your opinions or you don't bother.
Yeah, or I'd say nothing at all about anything. And, you know, there's kind of mixed reaction to that normally, but people appreciate that you've got to be honest with your readers. You know, they don't. I mean, I had a product recently, for instance, that was like an air filter, and it didn't do what they said it was going to do, and so I said, look, I can't tell people to go and buy this when clearly it doesn't do what you've said it's going to do. So I collected it again, and that was that.
And do you still have good relationships with those people afterwards, like for future work, future collaboration?
Yeah, because you're only being honest, and you're giving them a fair opportunity to kind of decide how you want to proceed with it, and you're not being, you know, I'm never like nasty to people about anything. I'm just saying this wasn't what I expected it to be, and you know, what do you want to do about it?
And so this kind of ties back into, I think, one of the perhaps most shocking stats from the survey, and it's the bottom part of this chart here, is that bloggers answering sponsorship disclosure is important for every collaboration. 13% of bloggers still don't think that they need to be disclosing. So what's your disclosure policy, and how does that work with what you're doing?
Well, I mean, it's the law, isn't it? Like advertising standards, you are required to disclose any form of partnership, and it all just comes back to that issue of trust, doesn't it? You're not doing yourself any favours long term if you don't disclose things, because people are going to figure it out, or they'll kind of think that it's weird, or they'll know that you've lied to them, and they won't want to come back, and because they won't trust what you're saying, and then you won't get as many opportunities. And so, you know, there's no benefit, as far as I can see, to not just being completely open about your disclosure. So, you know, if I've been paid to write about something, I'll say it's a sponsored post, or if I've had a product, or you know, I've been somewhere, I'll say I've received it, you know, the product free of charge, or whatever it might be. And I think you know, readers know that. Then they don't imagine that I just kind of do this for free. They know it's my job. I don't think there's a problem with that. What I have noticed over the
do you ever have pushback from the PRs or the brands asking you not to disclose?
Well, no, I was just going to say actually that what I have noticed in the last year or so especially is more and more brands who are like being really insistent on full disclosure, and kind of increasingly like including disclosures in individual tweets, or, you know, status updates, and of course Facebook's got its little handshake thing now as well. That makes that nice and easy. So I think there's definitely kind of a shift in that culture, and that more brands are realising that it's something that's really important for them to do. And hopefully that will kind of
filter down,
yeah, and it will, perhaps in the survey next year it won't be an issue.
So in the survey next year, what do you think, if you could look to the future, what kind of, this is our beautiful slide that represents the future, what kind of trends do you expect to see, or is there anything you expect to see that's changing or is different perhaps in the blogosphere?
Well, I guess if the kind of what we've seen recently in terms of kind of professionalism and standards, I would like to see that continue to evolve, so that more bloggers are kind of being professional about how they work and disclosing, and like kind of generally, I feel there's a kind of upping of the game that would be good to see. For a couple of years, I've kind of every year thought to myself, I need to get more into video. So I guess video is kind of continuing to be something that more bloggers are getting involved in. I'm not going to be doing any kind of like virtual reality, so nobody is going to need a headset to read my blog.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not in 2018, but perhaps in future beyond that.
Personally, my trend over the next 12 months is going to be to include my new kittens in every sponsored post that I possibly can.
Yes.
Obviously,
the kittens are amazing, and the fact we haven't spoken to them enough up to this point is frankly terrible.
Well, I was feeling sad about that, so I did just want to drop them in.
Excellent. I think we've probably got time for a question. But before we do, could you just tell our audience your kittens' names?
Okay, so I've got 3 kittens. They are called Detective Sergeant Camille Baudet, Detective Inspector Humphrey Goodman, and Chief Inspector Endeavour Morse. But we do call them just first names for short.
It is just like the most perfect thing. Just before we go, we do have, I think, time for a question. Vicky Pierce has asked, I understand that it must be quite frustrating for bloggers to feel they're expected to endorse a commercial brand for very little product or monetary compensation. But do you think it's different for non-profits? What do you expect in return for a non-profit in terms of payment for covering an item?
That's a good question, and I think it depends a lot on the organisation. Because I've worked in the voluntary sector quite a bit myself, and so I know, like from my own experience, that charities do have marketing budgets, and it is accepted that a charity has to spend money in order to raise money and all of that kind of thing. So on one level, I don't think it's fair, especially if the approach comes from like a large agency who are probably earning a fair chunk of money from the charity for their work. But that said, there's definitely like I try and keep room for doing some kind of more pro bono work for charity. So whether that might just be like, I share like half a dozen tweets around a particular campaign.
Yeah.
Or there's a couple of like charity stuff I've got coming up where charities have kind of won money on the back of kind of being able to say that they're going to get the support of some key influencers. And I'm actually going next week for a meeting with Refuge about being an ambassador for them, which will be a pro bono piece of work. So I think there's always like try and keep room in my schedule to be able to do bits and pieces, but kind of with that in the back of my mind that it's okay for a charity to spend money, if they want to.
Excellent. So I think that's unfortunately all we've got time for. Do keep your questions coming in, and if you want to reach us on Twitter, and if you want to reach Jo, she's all over the internet. You can download the survey, the links on the slide on your screens now. I'd like to thank Jo for joining us. I'd like to thank Canterbury Christ Church University for helping us with the survey, and I'd like to thank you all for listening. Thank you very much.